The Land of the Giant Items, Chapter 1. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there was a giant man named Gladfrey. Gladfrey was no ordinary giant, for he possessed an extraordinary talent. This talent was to make everything he touched turn giant. It all began on the morning of February 9th, 1806. This date does not have any significance except for the day that it all began on. Gladfrey woke up in his normal-sized home next to his normal-sized wife, with his normal-sized dog at his feet. The night before, Gladfrey had not said his prayers. Gladfrey was a Greek prince, and not saying his prayers made the gods angry. Zeus called for a shepherd boy who had seen a stick in the diner that he ate at last night to come before his throne. Zeus ordered the shepherd boy to go up to Gladfrey's house and knock. The shepherd boy did as he was told. After he had knocked, he stood there waiting. Gladfrey was still in bed. After about 10 minutes of waiting, the shepherd boy knocked again. This time he heard a loud bang and a long, scary sigh. For a second, the shepherd boy wanted to run, but he felt Zeus's presence, so he stayed there. The door slowly opened, and in it was a short little man with two heads. After some time of pondering this sight, the boy figured out that the second head was the head of his wife peeking over his shoulder to see who was at the door. The shepherd boy giggled at his slight miscalculation and handed a package to Gladfrey. Gladfrey sat down in his normal-sized chair and opened the package. It was not yet Christmas time, for it was only February. This made Gladfrey wonder about the contents of the package. There had been rumors of people sending false packages to people as pranks. These packages contained nothing but possibly a few bugs or maybe some grass. They mostly contained just air, which would have been nice if you were out of air, but Gladfrey was not out of air. He opened the package and there was a bright light, and he got scared and stubbed his toe on the coffee table when he fell backwards. He got up sneezing because the package contained a powder substance. Little did Gladfrey know, but it was a magical powder. The powder was known as Macumus giganticus. A few days went by and nothing happened. Then Gladfrey's wife purchased a microwave, and stuff got weird. He began to grow by the second, and before too long he was a giant. His wife thought he was under a spell and divorced him. This made the poor miser sad. He went to go live at the castle. It was emptied because everyone had a heart attack at the sight of a giant. Every time Gladfrey sneezed, something enlarged. Before he knew it, he acquired a cold. This caused him to sneeze a lot. Nobody wanted to be around him because after a while, the whole town knew of his problem. This happened when he sneezed one time and the neighbor's pet goldfish exploded. He had given that goldfish to them for their son's birthday. The son was no longer with them because he was one of the people that had a heart attack when he entered the castle. Later that night, Gladfrey sat down to his usual dinner of fish sticks. All of a sudden, he glanced at a light bulb and sneezed. This time it was the fish stick that was in his mouth that got really big. He began to choke. Someone thought a monster was killing a cow and shot at it. This caused the big fish stick to pop out of Gladfrey's mouth and go rolling down the hill. Gladfrey had dipped the fish stick in ketchup, and it resembled a monster that had just eaten a cow, to the untrained eye. It was all chewed up and looked like a snarling beast. The little farmer ran and ran until he was running in someone's driveway. Gladfrey sneezed again, and one of the driveway rocks enlarged. This happened to be right in front of the farmer's path. The farmer slammed into the enlarged pebble at full speed and got knocked out. Gladfrey was now the nation's #1 natural disaster. He was walking down the road and stopped to smell the flowers. Little did Gladfrey know, but he was allergic to pollen, and this caused him to sneeze. This time someone's front tooth enlarged and sliced off his bottom lip. This someone happened to be Gladfrey. He said, "Ow," and vowed never to sneeze again. All of a sudden, a gnat flew up his nose. and he picked it. Chapter 2. So there it was, the gnat glued to his knobby finger by a glob of green slime residue. Gladfrey had never seen a live gnat before, so this amused him. After trying to flick it off with his thumb for a good hour or two, he decided to give up. It is still there to this day. While walking to his den, Gladfrey got a horrible feeling. Slowly, he turned around. Horrified, Gladfrey saw children playing an odd new game. The group consisted of about 18 kids, give or take. They were throwing white balls at each other and attempting to hit them with a big smooth stick. The kids, shouting and screaming and stirring up a massive uproar, called it baseball. Gladfrey turned back around and remembered the wonderful times that he had playing with his friends after his studies, and continued on his walk. Gladfrey did not stop at all to smell the flowers, because he knew that if he did, one of those desperate little youngsters might explode, or worse, the ball would enlarge and roll over all of them, leaving none alive. As he walked, he got another disturbing feeling. His nose began to itch and his throat started to tickle. Uncomfortable in his own skin, Gladfrey searched rapidly for an empty field, somewhere where nothing would be caused any harm. Gladfrey was not a villain in any way. He felt bad about his problem. After what seemed like an eternity, he saw a grassy plain on the other side of town. Gladfrey ran faster and faster through the streets. The whole time he was sprinting, he was thinking, how? How could he have gotten an itch? All of a sudden, a volcanic uproar came from inside his nose. It was a sneeze attack. Through watery eyes, Gladfrey clawed his way up after tripping on a garden hose. He saw a billboard broadcasting to all passerby the new and improved Nasonex. It was allergy season. Oh no, thought Gladfrey. What on earth am I going to do? All the while sneezing uncontrollably. At the time he was unaware. The field he had been running into was a dry sage field, absolutely littered with little pollen-filled flowers. Gladfrey stood up, still sneezing uncontrollably. He ripped off his shirt and without any hesitation blew his nose. The sound was so loud an astronaut on the moon was forced to say excuse me to his fellow astronaut friends. After blowing his nose, the sneezing briefly stopped. However, it stopped long enough for him to see that the town had been destroyed. Gladfrey was sad. He saw giant beetles chewing the legs off the crying baseball kids. The school teacher had been chewing on a pencil that had enlarged and went straight through her head. There was the town tailor. He had been sewing a pair of trousers for a small naked child. He was fitting them, and the needle enlarged went through the leg of the child as well as the wrist of the tailor, making him bleed to death. The child, screaming, tried to scamper away, but was hindered by the lifeless body of the tailor. Peering over his shoulder with a grimaced look, he jumped when he saw the blacksmith trying to get out from under the horseshoes he was making. They had already been attached to the horse. This split the legs of the horse in two. This gruesome sight will be forever ingrained in Gladfrey's mind. Gladfrey looked down. He noticed that the gnat on his thumb had expanded in size and was now trying to pry itself off away from his thumb. Gladfrey's mucus had him pretty well stuck. Gladfrey now only has the abdomen of the giant gnat attached to his thumb. There was nothing left for Gladfrey in this ghost town. He ran away crying. Now, while Gladfrey sobbed, he began to cough. Instantly, he stopped crying. This brought a whole new worry. An uncontrollable shrink machine, he noticed, because the tree he was leaning on at the time turned into a tree roughly the size of a toothpick, and Gladfrey fell back, and it stuck into the back of his neck. Not enough to injure the possessed guy, but enough to cause irritation.